The cold hit my face so hard that for a second I forgot why I had stepped outside at all. I had just come out of the crew trailer, shoulders hunched against the wind, gloves stiff with frost, boots grinding over packed snow. The sky above the oil camp was the color of old steel. Nothing moved except the blowing powder sweeping across the road between the trailers. Then I opened the door to the medical station and saw her. My heart stumbled. That is the only way I can describe it. It did not race, it did not stop. It simply missed its rhythm, as if some quiet part of me had recognized her before my mind had a chance to understand. I did not know it then, but that single moment would split my life into before and after. My name is Ryan Whitaker. Back then, I was 32 years old, divorced, tired, and convinced that the safest way to live was not to expect too much from anyone. I worked as a mechanical engineer on an oil field on the north slope of Alaska, in a place where winter seemed endless and the wind could make a grown man feel small. The camp was a world of metal stairs, floodlights, frozen pipes, diesel fumes, and men who talked too loud in the cafeteria because silence made them think about home. We worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. We slept in narrow rooms with thin walls. We counted the days until the next flight south, and then, when we got home, some of us did not know what to do with ourselves. I was one of those men. 3 years had passed since my divorce. My son Caleb lived with his mother in Idaho. I sent money every month, called him every Sunday, and told myself that was what a responsible father did. I loved him more than anything, but love over a phone line has a way of making a man feel both necessary and useless. My apartment in Anchorage was always clean because no one was there long enough to make a mess. I owned 2 plates, 1 coffee mug, and a couch I had bought because it was the cheapest one the store could deliver the same day. I worked, I paid bills, I flew south when I could, and I tried not to want more than life seemed willing to give me. Then January came. The temperature dropped below anything that felt human. One of the pressure valves on a well line froze and failed during a maintenance check. 3 of us were sent out before dawn. Steam rolled across the platform like a white wall. The metal groaned under our boots. We had to keep the line stable until the replacement parts arrived from the warehouse. I held my hands against a pipe for too long. At first the cold was sharp, then it burned. Then my fingers stopped hurting, which was the worst sign of all. When the supervisor saw the color of my skin, he grabbed my arm and shouted over the wind, "Medical station, now!" I tried to argue. Men in camps like that always try to argue. We pretend pain is an inconvenience, not a warning. But he shoved me toward the truck, and 5 minutes later I was standing inside the medical station with snow melting off my boots. She was behind the counter, bending over a tray of supplies. She looked up. She was not what anyone would call glamorous. She wore a navy sweatshirt under a white coat, her dark hair tied back carelessly, her face pale from the fluorescent light. There were faint shadows under her eyes. She looked like someone who had already been awake for too long. But her eyes were green and steady, and when she saw my hands, everything about her became focused. "Sit down," she said. "Gloves off, slowly." Her voice was calm, not sweet, not soft in the way people pretend to be soft. Calm like a person who knew exactly what fear looked like and refused to let it run the room. "I can still move them," I said. "That is not the question." I sat. She took my hands in hers. Her fingers were warm. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was the small crease between her eyebrows as she examined my skin. "How long were you out there?" "Long enough to earn a lecture, I guess." She did not smile. "How long?" "A couple of hours." She looked at me then, really looked, and I felt foolish in a way I had not felt in years. "You engineers are all the same," she said. "You treat your own body like equipment that can be replaced from a shelf. Only when the shelf is well stocked." That time, the corner of her mouth moved. Her name was Nora Ellis. She was the camp physician assistant, 30 years old, from Montana originally, though she had worked in clinics all over the Northwest. She told me this later. That day, she said very little. She warmed my hands carefully, checked my pulse, checked the feeling in each finger, wrapped them, and told me to come back the next morning. "I have work," I said. "You also have fingers," she replied. Try to keep both. I should have left then. I should have thanked her and gone back to my trailer. Instead, I lingered near the door, looking at the bulletin board, the old coffee machine, the cracked plastic chair in the corner. "You new here?" I asked. "Temporary contract." "Why here?" She paused, as if deciding how much truth to spend on a stranger. "Because they pay well." Everyone on the slope had a reason for being there. Some were paying child support. Some were running from divorce. Some were saving for houses, debts, surgeries, mistakes. Nobody came to that frozen edge of the world because it was beautiful, though sometimes it was. "Fair enough," I said. She looked back at my bandaged hands. "Come tomorrow." "Yes, ma'am." "Do not call me ma'am." "Yes, Dr. Ellis." "I am not a doctor." "Then I will have to come tomorrow and find out what to call you." This time she did smile, only for a second, but it stayed with me the rest of the day. I returned the next morning. And the morning after that. At first, I had a reason. My hands needed checking. Then I invented reasons. A headache, a cough, a question about whether the cafeteria coffee counted as a controlled substance. Nora saw through every one of them. "You know," she said one evening while changing the dressing on my fingers, "most men avoid medical stations unless something is falling off. Maybe I am more responsible than most men." "No, I do not think that is it." She did not say what she thought it was. The days passed. The darkness loosened by minutes. The cold remained. I learned that Nora drank tea, not coffee. I learned she hated the smell of diesel, but liked the sound of wind when she was indoors. I learned she had a mother in Missoula whose heart was failing, and that Nora had taken the North Slope contract because the regular clinic salary back home was not enough to cover everything. She did not complain. That was what made it worse. People who complain still believe someone might help them. Nora carried her fear quietly, like a heavy bag she refused to set down, because setting it down would mean admitting how tired she was. One night, I found her outside the medical station, looking up at the sky. The northern lights were moving over us in pale green curtains, folding and unfolding above the camp. The floodlights hummed. Somewhere far off, machinery thudded in the dark. "Could not sleep?" I asked. "Could not stop thinking." "That is worse." She glanced at me. "You sound like you know." "I know enough." For a while, we stood without speaking. In a place like that, silence could become either a wall or a bridge. With Nora, it became a bridge. I told her about Caleb, about missing his first loose tooth because I was on shift, about the drawing he once mailed me of an airplane with two stick figures waving from separate windows. One was him, one was me. The plane was flying between us. Nora listened in a way that made me keep talking. "My ex-wife says I chose work over family," I said. "Maybe she is right." "Did you?" No one had asked me that directly before. I thought I was choosing stability, money, health insurance, a future. Sometimes people choose the best thing they know how to choose at the time. That sounds kinder than I deserve. Maybe you are too used to punishing yourself. I laughed once, quietly. "You diagnose everyone? Only the obvious cases." Something changed after that night. Not all at once. Nothing dramatic, just small things. She saved me the last decent orange from the cafeteria. I fixed the latch on the medical station door because the wind kept forcing it open. She started asking about Caleb. I started asking about her mother, whose name was Marion, and who had once run a flower shop before her hands became too shaky to arrange stems. We were careful. The camp was a gossip machine with walls thin enough to hear a man turn in his sleep. Nora had a job to protect. I had a reputation for keeping my head down, so we did not touch in public. We did not sit too close in the cafeteria. We did not give anyone a story to chew on. But when she smiled at me across a room, the whole place seemed less frozen. By March, I knew I loved her. I did not say it, neither did she. Words make things real, and real things can be lost. But one night, after a minor accident brought half the maintenance crew into the medical station with cuts and bruises, I stayed behind to help clean up. Nora looked exhausted. A strand of hair had come loose and stuck to her cheek. There was antiseptic on the air and snow beating against the window. "You should go sleep," she said. "So should you." "I am serious." "So am I." She looked at me then, and the room became very quiet. I do not remember moving toward her. I only remember her hand on my chest, not pushing me away, and the expression in her eyes, frightened and hopeful at the same time. "Ryan," she whispered. "I know. This is a bad idea." "Probably." I cannot afford a bad idea. Neither can I. Then she kissed me. It was not a careless kiss. It was not the kind of kiss people give when they want to forget themselves. It felt like two exhausted people finally admitting they had been holding their breath. After that, the camp became both easier and harder. Easier because I had someone to look for in every room. Harder because every day carried the fear of losing what we had not even dared to name. We met when we could. Sometimes only for 10 minutes behind the storage building, our shoulders touching, breath turning white in the dark. Sometimes in the medical station after everyone else had gone, sitting on the floor with our backs against the cabinets, sharing crackers and tea like it was a feast. She told me about her father leaving when she was young, about becoming responsible too early, about learning that if she did not handle things, no one would. I told her about my marriage ending slowly, not with one explosion, but with hundreds of quiet disappointments. I told her how ashamed I felt when Caleb cried at the airport and asked why I always had to leave. Nora held my hand when I said that. "Children know love," she said, "even when adults make a mess of the schedule." "You think he would like you?" She looked away. "Would you want him to?" More than I should admit. A few days later, I called Caleb by video from the common room. Nora stood just out of frame at first, nervous in a way I had never seen her nervous. "Buddy," I said, "there is someone I want you to meet." Caleb was 7 then, all bright eyes and missing teeth. He leaned close to the screen. "Is it a dog?" Nora covered her mouth to keep from laughing. "No," I said, "not a dog. This is Nora." She stepped into view. "Hi, Caleb." He studied her seriously. "Do you work with my dad?" "I do." "Does he eat vegetables there?" I groaned. Nora's eyes lit up. "Not enough," she said. "I knew it." By the end of the call, Caleb had shown her his dinosaur book, asked whether Alaska had polar bears walking around the bedrooms, and informed her that my pancakes were medium good. After we hung up, Nora wiped at her eyes. "He is wonderful." "He is stubborn." "He is yours." I looked at her face in the glow of the screen and knew then, with a certainty that frightened me, that I wanted a life with her. Not a camp romance, not stolen minutes, a life. A kitchen with her tea on the counter, Caleb laughing at the table, her mother's flowers in a vase. Ordinary things. Impossible things. We started making plans. My rotation would end in late April. She was supposed to finish her contract around the same time. I would fly to Anchorage, take a few days, then drive down to see Caleb before meeting Nora in Montana. We would go slowly. We would not scare Caleb. We would not rush her mother. We would be careful and practical. For the first time in years, the future did not feel like an obligation. It felt like a door. Those weeks were the closest thing to happiness I had known in a long time. We did not have much, and what we had was hidden inside ordinary moments. Nora would leave a paper cup of tea on the corner of my workbench with no note, because a note could be found. I would bring her a sandwich from the cafeteria when she missed dinner during a shift. If our hands brushed in the hallway, both of us would pretend not to notice, then spend the rest of the day thinking about it. Once, during a whiteout, the entire camp was ordered indoors except for essential crews. The wind covered the windows so thickly with snow that the world outside disappeared. Nora and I ended up in the supply room sorting medical inventory because she said if she sat still, she would start worrying about her mother. We counted bandages, gloves, saline bags, cold medicine, and emergency blankets. It should have been boring. Instead, I remember it as one of the gentlest afternoons of my life. "You alphabetize painkillers?" I asked. "You have a problem with order?" "I work with machines." I respect order. I just did not know ibuprofen had a social hierarchy. She threw a roll of gauze at me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. I picked it up and placed it carefully on the shelf. "See," she said. "Trainable." I looked at her then, really looked. Her sleeves were pushed up, her cheeks pink from laughing, her hair coming loose around her face. For a second, the camp disappeared. There was no oil field, no divorce, no sick mother, no distance waiting at the edge of our plans. There was only Nora standing in a narrow supply room, laughing because of me. I almost told her I loved her. The words rose all the way to my throat. Then someone knocked on the door, and the moment closed. That is how it was with us. Always almost. Always waiting for a safer time, as if love had ever cared about safety. Then Nora found out she was pregnant. It happened on a Thursday morning. I remember because the cafeteria had burned oatmeal, and everyone complained about it. Nora sent me a message asking me to come to the medical station after shift. When I walked in, she was standing by the sink with her arms wrapped around herself. "What happened?" I asked. She looked at me, and all the color had gone from her face. "I am pregnant." For a second, the room tilted. Not because I did not want the child. That was the part Nora never understood at first. The shock was not rejection. It was the sudden weight of every problem standing up at once. Caleb, my divorce agreement, Nora's mother, the camp, money, distance, fear, and underneath all of that, a strange, bright feeling I was afraid to touch. "Say something," she whispered. I took one step toward her. "We will figure it out." She shook her head. "Do not say that like it is easy." I did not say it was easy. "My mother needs care. I took this contract because I had no choice. I do not have a house. I do not have savings. I do not have room in my life for one more person depending on me. This baby would depend on both of us." She closed her eyes. "You already have a child. That does not mean I cannot love another one. You say that now." Those words hurt, but I understood where they came from. Nora had spent her life being the person others leaned on. Trust did not come naturally to her. Trust looked, to her, like the thing people asked for right before they left. The weeks after that were the hardest of my life up to that point. We argued. Quietly at first, then not quietly at all. She accused me of wanting to rescue her because it made me feel noble. I accused her of shutting me out before I had done anything wrong. She said I could not understand what it felt like to carry a child in a place where everything was uncertain. I said she would not let me try. We said things that stayed in the room after we left it. One night, after a terrible argument, she threw a stack of paperwork off the desk and shouted, "Go, Ryan, please, just go." So I went. I walked through the camp in the dark, past the equipment yard, past the line of trailers, past the place where we had once stood under the northern lights. The wind cut through my jacket. I kept walking until my anger ran out and all that remained was fear. Maybe she was right. Maybe love was not enough. Maybe I had already failed one family and was about to fail another. Maybe the responsible thing was to step back before I ruined her life. By morning, I hated myself for thinking it. When I returned to the medical station, Nora looked like she had not slept. "I should not have told you to leave," she said. "I should not have left." We stood there, both too tired to pretend. "I am scared," she said. "So am I. I cannot lose my mother." "You will not. You do not know that." "No. But I know I will help." That was when I made the decision that changed everything. An old friend of mine, Travis, had moved to a different company, working a brutal contract farther north. The pay was better, much better, but the rotation was longer, the work riskier, and communication unreliable. I had refused it twice before. That night, I called him. "You still need a mechanical supervisor?" I asked. He laughed. "You finally tired of sleeping indoors?" "I need the money." "Everybody needs money." "I need it fast." He stopped laughing. Within a week, I had accepted the contract. When I told Nora, she stared at me as if I had betrayed her. "You are leaving?" "For 3 months. While I am pregnant." "For you, for your mother, for the baby." "Do not make it sound beautiful." "I am not." "You think money fixes everything?" "No, but no money makes everything harder." She turned away, pressing one hand to her mouth. "I needed you here." Those words almost broke me. "I will come back," I said. "Everyone says that." "I mean it." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Then why does it feel like you are already gone?" I did not know how to answer. 2 days before my transfer flight, the accident happened. A line ruptured near one of the processing units. Alarms screamed across the camp. Men ran from every direction. Steam and smoke swallowed the platform. For hours, everything became noise, heat, orders, and instinct. I helped shut valves, move equipment, and drag one injured worker away from a stairwell slick with ice. At some point, I saw Nora through the chaos, kneeling beside a man with burns on his arm. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady. "Go!" she shouted when she saw me looking. So I went. By the time the fire crew had the area under control, the medical station was crowded with injured men, supervisors, and emergency staff from the neighboring site. I pushed through the doorway looking for Nora. She was not there. One of the nurses told me she had been evacuated with 2 patients to Fairbanks. Another said Anchorage. Someone else said she had returned to the dormitory. No one knew. In a crisis, information breaks into pieces, and every piece cuts. I called her. No answer. I went to her room. Her coat was gone. Her bag was gone. On the desk was a folded piece of paper with my name on it. My hands shook as I opened it. "Ryan, please do not hate me. I cannot do this to you. You have Caleb. You have a life. I will not become another burden you feel responsible for. I am going home. I need to think. I need to take care of my mother and this baby without making you choose between us and your son. I love you. That is why I have to leave before we destroy each other. Nora." I read it once, then again. Then a third time because my mind refused to accept the words in the order they were written. She was gone. The next morning, a helicopter took me to the new site. I sat by the window and watched the white land pass below us. I should have refused to go. I should have stayed and searched every airport, every clinic, every hotel in Fairbanks until I found her. But shock makes cowards of people who later tell themselves they were being practical. I told myself I needed the money. I told myself she had asked for space. I told myself 3 months would pass quickly. I told myself lies because the truth was too simple. I had lost her. The new camp was worse than the first, colder, louder, more dangerous. The wind never stopped. We worked until our bodies became machines. Communication was unreliable, and when the satellite connection worked, I used every minute trying to reach Nora. Her phone went straight to voicemail. At first, anger kept me standing. I was angry at her for leaving, angry at myself for letting her, angry at the company for sending me to a place where the sky looked like punishment, angry at every man in the bunkhouse who complained about bad coffee when my whole life had come apart and nobody could see it. But anger is a poor fuel. It burns hot and leaves you emptier than before. After a while, all I had left was worry. I worried about whether she was eating, whether the baby was all right, whether she had enough money for appointments, whether her mother had gotten worse, whether Nora was waking in the night the way I was, reaching for a phone and then stopping herself. I kept the note folded in my wallet. The paper softened at the edges from being opened too many times. I hated that note. I loved it too, because it was the last thing I had from her. Some nights I would take it out and read the sentence where she wrote that she loved me. I would read it until the words blurred. Then I would fold it again and go back to work. I called the clinic in Montana where she had worked before. They would not give me information. I called hospitals in Missoula, then in nearby towns. I called every number I could find connected to her name. Most led nowhere. Some led to strangers. A few led to silence. I left messages until I hated the sound of my own voice. "Nora, it is Ryan. Please call me. I am not angry. I just need to know you are safe. Nora, please, I will help however you want. Just tell me where you are. Nora, if you do not want to speak to me, I will respect that. But please let me know about the baby." No answer. At night, when exhaustion should have taken me, I dreamed of her standing at the edge of a snowfield, calling my name. I walked toward her, but the distance never closed. After 6 weeks, I called my mother. She lived in Oregon, in the same small house where I had grown up. She had never been a woman who softened the truth. "You sound dead," she said. "I am fine. That is what men say when they are not." I told her everything, not all at once. The words came out unevenly, with long silences between them. Nora, the baby, the argument, the note, the search. My mother listened. When I finished, she said, "Do you love her?" "Yes." "Do you want the child?" "Yes." "Then stop acting like this is a storm you are waiting to pass. Go find them." "I have a contract." "Break it." "I need the money. You need your family more." I stared at the phone in my hand. My family. The words landed with a weight I had been afraid to give them. I finished the shortest exit period the company would allow, lost a chunk of pay, and flew south with one duffel bag, a folder of paperwork, and a fear so large it felt like another person sitting beside me on the plane. I started in Missoula. Nora's old apartment had a new tenant. Her former supervisor had not seen her in months. Her mother's flower shop had closed years earlier. The house, listed under Marion Ellis's name, had been sold after medical bills piled up. For days, I moved through the city like a man chasing a shadow. I showed Nora's photo at clinics, pharmacies, churches, diners. Most people shook their heads. Some looked at me with suspicion. A few softened when I said she was pregnant and I was the father. One woman at a small urgent care clinic studied the photo longer than the others. "She looks familiar," she said. My heart began to pound. "Please, I cannot give out patient information. I am not asking for records. I just need to know if she is alive." The woman looked toward the hallway, then lowered her voice. "A woman like this worked here for a short time in the summer. Different last name on the paperwork, I think. She left around September. Do you know where she went?" "No, but she mentioned staying near her mother outside town, maybe east, maybe one of the smaller communities." It was almost nothing, but almost nothing was more than I had. I drove east. I checked towns with one grocery store and one gas station. I asked at county offices, small clinics, churches, laundromats. I learned how large a state can feel when you are searching for one woman who does not want to be found. Meanwhile, I later learned, Nora was living a life I'd only imagined in fragments. She had returned to Montana because her mother was getting worse. Marion needed help with appointments, medication, and daily care. Nora rented a room in a tired old house outside a small town because it was all she could afford. She took shifts wherever clinics needed coverage. She hid her pregnancy under loose sweaters until hiding became impossible. When her mother finally asked, "Sweetheart, are you pregnant?" Nora broke down. Marion held her and asked who the father was. "A good man," Nora said. "Then why is he not here?" Nora could not answer. Because she had run. Because she was afraid I would resent her. Because she thought leaving first would hurt less than being left later. Because the old wounds in her life had taught her the wrong lessons about love. At one of her clinic jobs, a nurse told her a man had been calling around looking for her. Tall, the nurse said. Tired voice. Said his name was Ryan. Nora went pale. Did he leave a number? Several times. That night, Nora sat on the edge of her bed with my number written on a scrap of paper. She told me later that she dialed half of it a dozen times and never pressed call. She was ashamed. She was scared. And by then she had convinced herself I deserved a better life than chasing a woman who had disappeared with his child. But I did not want a better life. I wanted the true one. By late October, I was almost out of money and nearly out of hope. I had taken a temporary maintenance job at a repair shop while I searched. At night, I slept in cheap motels or in my truck. I kept a map on the passenger seat, covered in circles and notes. Every morning, I chose another town. There were days I felt ridiculous. A grown man with a photograph, walking into places where nobody knew him, asking the same question until even kind people grew uncomfortable. More than once, someone looked at me as if I might be dangerous. I understood that. A tired man searching for a pregnant woman can sound like a warning instead of a love story. So I learned to speak carefully. I am not here to force anything, I would say. I just need to know she is safe. If she tells me to leave, I will leave. Sometimes I believed that. Sometimes, alone in the truck afterward, I was not sure I could survive hearing it. One evening, I stopped outside a closed diner and called Caleb. He was eating cereal even though it was late. His mother had let him because he had finished his homework, and he was proud of the bargain. "Dad," he said, "are you still looking for your friend?" I closed my eyes. Yes. Is she lost? In a way. Maybe she needs a map. I laughed, because if I did not, I might have cried. Maybe I do too. When you find her, can you come see me? That question hurt more than any accusation could have. Yes, buddy, I promise. You promise for real? For real. After we hung up, I sat in the dark cab of the truck and understood that searching for Nora did not excuse me from being Caleb's father. Love did not cancel love. I had to become the kind of man who could hold more than one promise at the same time. Then, on a rainy afternoon, I walked into a tiny clinic attached to a pharmacy in a town I had nearly skipped. The receptionist was an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. I had said the same words so many times they felt carved into my mouth. I am looking for this woman. Her name is Nora Ellis. She may have worked in medical care. She is pregnant. I am the father of her child. The woman took the photo. Her expression changed. I cannot tell you anything official. My knees almost gave out. But you know her. She looked at the photo again. She helped here until the end of September. Sweet girl, quiet, too thin. She was expecting. Where is she? I do not have an address. Please. The woman hesitated. She once mentioned staying with her mother near Cedar Ridge, old farmhouse off Willow Creek Road. That is all I know. I thanked her so many times she had to tell me to go. It was snowing by the time I reached Cedar Ridge. The town was barely more than a church, a store, and a line of houses with smoke rising from chimneys. Willow Creek Road curved into dark fields and pine trees. I found the farmhouse at the end of a gravel drive. It leaned a little to one side, weathered and poor, but stubbornly standing. One window glowed with yellow light. My truck idled behind me. Snow ticked against the windshield. For several minutes, I could not move. What if she refused to see me? What if she had decided the child was better off without me? What if I knocked and discovered I was too late? Then the door opened. Nora stepped onto the porch carrying a small bag of trash. She had a gray coat pulled tight around her. Her hair was loose under a knit hat. Her face was thinner than I remembered, and beneath the coat, her pregnancy was unmistakable. I got out of the truck. She froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The snow fell between us. Ryan, she said. My name and her voice nearly brought me to my knees. I have been looking for you, I said. She covered her mouth with one hand. You should not have. Do not say that. I left you a note. I know. I told you I could not do this, and I am telling you that you do not have to do it alone. Her eyes filled with tears. You had Caleb, your work, your life. You are my life too. She shook her head as if the words hurt. I was so scared. So was I. I thought you would hate me. I was angry, I was hurt, but I never hated you. The porch light flickered above her. Behind her, an older woman's voice called from inside. Nora, who is there? Nora looked back, then at me. My mother. May I meet her? She laughed once through her tears. After all this, you are asking permission? I am trying to do at least one thing right. She stood aside. Inside, the house was cold despite the wood stove. The furniture was old. A stack of medical bills sat on the kitchen table beside a bottle of vitamins and a chipped mug. Marian Ellis sat in a chair near the stove, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale, but her eyes sharp. She looked from Nora to me. So you are Ryan? Yes, ma'am. Did you hurt my daughter? The question was not unfair. Yes, I said, and she hurt me, but I love her, and I want to help if she will let me. Marian studied me for a long moment. Do you want that baby? I looked at Nora's hands resting protectively over her stomach. More than I know how to say. The room went quiet. Then Nora began to cry. I crossed the kitchen and stopped in front of her, afraid to touch her without permission. Nora, I said, I left the contract. I am not going back to that life the way it was. I found work nearby for now. I can help with your mother. I can help with appointments. I can be here. You gave up your job? I gave up a job. Not my son, not you, not this child. Caleb. I talked to his mother. It will not be simple, but I will make the trips. I will show up for him and for this baby. I should have learned how to do that sooner. She looked at me as if she wanted to believe, and was afraid belief itself might break. "I do not know how to trust this," she whispered. "Then do not trust all of it today. Trust this one day. I am here." That was how we began again. Not with a grand reunion, not with music or certainty. With one day, then another. I rented a small room in town and took every job I could find. Repairs at the mill, heating systems, farm equipment. Anything with bolts, wires, motors, or pipes. I drove Nora to appointments. I fixed the farmhouse steps. I chopped wood until my shoulders burned. I sat with Marion while Nora worked short shifts at the clinic. The first morning after I found her, I came back with groceries. Not expensive things. Eggs, bread, soup, apples, milk, a bag of oranges because I remembered she liked them, and a small bunch of grocery store flowers for Marion. I stood in the kitchen feeling foolish with the flowers in my hand. Marion looked at them and then at me. Trying to charm an old woman? Is it working? Not yet. But she took the flowers and put them in a jar by the window. Nora watched from the doorway, wearing an oversized sweater and an expression I could not read. "You did not have to buy all this." "I know." "Ryan." "Nora, if you say you will pay me back, I am going to go outside and shovel snow until both of us forget this conversation." Her mouth trembled. "I do not know how to accept help." "Then we will start with groceries." She looked down at the bag of oranges. "I missed you," she said so quietly I almost did not hear it. I wanted to cross the room and hold her. Instead, I stayed where I was, because love had to become patient if it was going to survive us. "I missed you too." At first, Nora kept waiting for me to resent it. If I looked tired, she apologized. If I bought groceries, she promised to pay me back. If I stayed late to repair something, she told me I did not have to. One evening, after I spent 3 hours sealing a draft around the back door, she stood in the kitchen watching me put away the tools. "You do not have to prove anything every minute," she said. "I am not. It feels like you are." I wiped my hands on a rag. Maybe I am proving it to myself. She softened then. "Ryan, I spent years being half present in the lives of people I loved. I told myself I was providing. I was, but I was also hiding. I do not want to hide anymore." She came to me slowly and rested her forehead against my chest. It was the first time since I found her that she touched me without fear. In December, Caleb came to visit. I was more nervous than I had been for any emergency in my life. Nora baked pancakes because she remembered he liked them. She burned the first batch and nearly cried. I told her he would like them better because he could make fun of me for choosing a woman who cooked like I did. When Caleb arrived with his mother, he stepped out of the car holding a backpack and a stuffed dinosaur. He looked older than he had on video. Children do that to parents who are gone too much. They grow in the spaces where you are absent. I hugged him too tightly. "Dad," he said, muffled against my coat. "I need air." I laughed and let go. Nora stood on the porch, one hand on her stomach. Caleb looked at her, then at me. "Is that the baby?" "That is Nora," I said gently. "The baby is still inside." He considered this. "I know that." "I meant, is that where the baby is?" Nora smiled. "Yes." Caleb walked up the steps. "My dad says you make pancakes." "I try." "He makes medium good pancakes." "I heard." He looked at her stomach again. "Is it my brother?" "We do not know yet," Nora said. "If it is a sister, that is okay too." Nora pressed her lips together. I could see she was trying not to cry. Later that night, after Caleb had fallen asleep on the couch with the dinosaur on his chest, Nora stood in the doorway and watched him. "He is kind," she whispered. "He gets that from his mother. And some from you. Maybe a little." She took my hand. "I was afraid he would hate me." "For what?" "For needing you." I looked at Caleb, then at Nora. "Love is not a pie," I said. "I do not run out because more people need me." She leaned into my shoulder. "I want to believe that. We will teach each other." In January, we learned the baby was a girl. Nora cried during the ultrasound. I did too, though I tried to hide it and failed badly. The technician smiled and handed us a small printed image, gray and grainy, impossible and perfect. "A daughter," Nora whispered. "A daughter," I repeated. For the rest of the day, I carried that word around like a light inside my chest. We chose the name Sophie, not because life had been graceful. It had not. It had been messy, frightened, proud, and painful. We chose it because grace was what had found us anyway. The final weeks of the pregnancy were not easy. Marion had a bad spell and spent several days in the hospital. Nora's blood pressure worried the doctor. Money stayed tight. The farmhouse pipes froze twice. Caleb cried on the phone one night because he wanted to visit but had a school concert he could not miss. Life did not become simple just because love returned. That was one of the lessons I had to learn. Love does not remove every burden. It gives you someone to stand beside while you carry it. Sophie was born during a snowstorm in March. The labor started before dawn. Nora woke me with one hand gripping my arm and an expression that made every nerve in my body go alert. "Ryan," she said, "it is time." The road to the hospital was slick and half covered. I drove slowly while Nora breathed through contractions and told me not to panic, which was impossible advice. Marion sat in the back seat, praying under her breath. At the hospital, everything moved too fast and too slowly at once. Nurses came and went, machines beeped. Nora crushed my hand in hers with surprising strength. "Do not leave," she said. "I am not leaving. Promise. I promise." Hours passed. Her hair stuck to her face. Her voice grew hoarse. I told her she was strong. She told me to stop talking. Then she told me not to stop talking. I did whatever she asked because that was the only useful thing I could do. When Sophie finally cried, the sound opened something in me I had not known was closed. The nurse placed her on Nora's chest. She was tiny, red, furious, alive. Nora looked down at her and sobbed. I touched one small foot with the tip of my finger. "Hi, Sophie," I whispered. "I am your dad." Dad. The word felt both familiar and new. Nora looked up at me. "You stayed. I told you I would." "I know." But I understood what she meant. She was not talking about the room. She was talking about the storm, the months, the fear, the parts of her that expected people to disappear when life became difficult. I kissed her forehead. "I am still here." The first weeks after Sophie came home nearly defeated us. She cried at night. She cried after feeding. She cried when we set her down, and sometimes when we picked her up. Nora was exhausted from nursing and healing. I walked the floor with Sophie against my shoulder, singing old songs badly because those were the only ones I knew. One night, after 3 hours of crying, Nora broke down. "I am a terrible mother," she said. "I cannot even comfort my own baby." I sat beside her on the bed, Sophie wailing between us. "Then I am a terrible father because I cannot comfort her either." Nora gave a wet, unwilling laugh. "That is not funny." "No, but it is true. Maybe babies are just unreasonable employers." She laughed again, then cried harder, and I held them both as best I could. Marion recovered enough to help in small ways. She folded tiny clothes, warmed bottles, told Nora she was doing better than she thought. Caleb visited during spring break and stared at Sophie with solemn fascination. "She is very small," he said. "You were too once." "No, I wasn't." "You definitely were." He touched Sophie's blanket. "Can she hear me?" "Yes." He leaned closer. "Hi, I am Caleb. I have dinosaurs." Sophie yawned. He looked offended. "She is not impressed." "Give her time," Nora said. By summer, we had moved into a small rental house closer to town. It had uneven floors, a leaky porch roof, and a kitchen window that caught the morning sun. To us, it felt like a palace. I found steady work with a regional energy company, repairing and inspecting equipment without disappearing for months at a time. It paid less than the oil camps, but I slept in my own bed. I woke to Sophie's cries, Nora's breathing, the smell of coffee, and sometimes Caleb sprawled on the couch during visits, one sock missing as always. Nora returned to part-time clinic work. Marion moved into a small apartment nearby after her health stabilized. We were tired all the time. We argued sometimes. We worried about money. We filled out forms, made schedules, missed sleep, forgot laundry in the washer, and learned how to become a family without pretending it was effortless. There were still hard conversations. One night, after Caleb had gone back to Idaho, I found Nora sitting on the porch steps in the dark. Sophie was asleep inside. The house behind us smelled of warm milk and laundry soap. "What are you doing out here?" I asked. "Feeling guilty." I sat beside her. "About what?" Caleb cried when he left. He cries sometimes, then he tells me he did not. I keep thinking I took something from him. You did not. You have a new family now. No, I said. I have a bigger family now. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. I am afraid he will feel replaced. Then we make sure he never has to wonder, not with words only, with time, with showing up. And if we fail, then we apologize and do better. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You make it sound simple. It is not simple. It is just clear. That became our rule. Not perfect, clear. When Caleb visited, he got time that belonged to him. When Sophie needed us, Caleb saw that love meant caring, not competition. When Nora worried she was too much, I told her the truth until repetition wore a path through fear. When I drifted toward old habits, toward working too long or going quiet instead of speaking, she called me back. We were not healed all at once. We were healed in repetitions. Dinner after a bad day. A hand reached across the bed. A phone call answered. A promise kept so many times that it stopped sounding like a promise and started feeling like ground. One evening in September, almost a year after I had found Nora at the farmhouse, we drove to a lake outside town. The air was cool, the kind of cool that reminds you winter is waiting, but not here yet. Caleb skipped rocks badly. Sophie slept against Nora's chest in a carrier. The sunset turned the water gold. Nora stood beside me and watched Caleb celebrate after one rock finally bounced twice. Do you ever think about the camp? She asked. Sometimes. Do you regret it? I looked at her. Which part? All of it. I thought about the frozen pipe, the medical station, the northern lights, the note, the months of searching, the farmhouse in the snow. Pain has a strange way of becoming sacred after it no longer owns you. No, I said. I regret the ways I hurt you. I regret leaving when you needed me. But I do not regret where it brought us. She nodded slowly. I used to think love meant someone would save me from being afraid. And now? Now I think love means being afraid and staying anyway. I took her hand. Caleb shouted from the shore. Dad! Did you see that? I saw it. It was 3 skips. It was 2.5. That counts. Nora laughed, and Sophie stirred against her. In that moment, I understood something I wish I had known years earlier. Family is not built only from blood or papers or promises made when life is easy. Family is built in the returning, in the choosing again, in the nights when everyone is tired and someone still gets up, in the apology after pride has cooled, in the long drive down a snowy road because love is somewhere at the end of it, even if you are not sure you will be welcomed when you arrive. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night and look at Nora sleeping beside me. Sophie is older now, but in those early months her crib stood near our bed, and I would watch her tiny chest rise and fall. On weekends, Caleb would sleep in the next room, his backpack dumped by the door, his shoes always in the wrong place. I would lie there in the dark and think, this is my life. Not the life I planned, not the neat version I once thought I needed. A harder life, a fuller one, a life that asked more of me than loneliness ever did, and I was grateful. Grateful for the cold morning that sent me to the medical station. Grateful for the woman who looked at my hands and saw more than frostbite. Grateful for the child who came before we were ready and taught us that readiness is not the same as love. Grateful even for the months of searching, because they stripped away every excuse I had used to stay half alive. Nora once asked me what I would have done if she had not opened the door that night at the farmhouse. I told her the truth. I would have kept knocking. Maybe not on that door, but on every door life put in front of me until I found you. She cried when I said that. Then she smiled and told me I was still too dramatic for an engineer. Maybe I am. But some things deserve drama. Some things deserve every mile, every sleepless night, every foolish hope you keep alive when the world tells you to let go. This is our story. It is not a perfect love story. Perfect stories are usually too clean to be true. Ours had fear in it, pride, bad timing, debt, distance, mistakes. Words we wished we could take back. Silence that lasted too long. But it also had a woman brave enough to love after a lifetime of carrying too much. It had a man stubborn enough to search after he finally understood what mattered. It had a little boy who made room in his heart for a sister before he even met her. It had a mother who asked hard questions because she loved her daughter. And it had a baby named Sophie who arrived in a storm and somehow brought peace with her. If I have learned anything, it is this. Real love is not proven by the promises people make when they are happy. It is proven by what they do when they are afraid. It is the hand that reaches again after being pushed away. It is the voice that says, "I am here," and then stays long enough for those words to become believable. Nora is in the kitchen now, humming while Sophie bangs a spoon against her high chair. Caleb is in the living room, trying to teach his sister the names of dinosaurs she cannot pronounce. Marion is coming over for dinner. There are bills on the counter, laundry on the chair, and a loose porch board I keep meaning to fix. It is not a grand life. It is better. It is ours. And sometimes, when the evening light comes through the kitchen window and Nora looks at me over Sophie's head, I still feel that same impossible pause in my chest that I felt the first day I opened the door to the medical station. My heart stumbles, only now it knows exactly why. If this story touched you, stay with us for more emotional life stories about love, family, second chances, and the choices that change everything.